Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to really get into management styles.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not going to, just stay theoretical here.
Right.
We've actually got a case study for this one. Manufacturing business. To see how different approaches to management actually play out.
Yeah, in the real world.
Exactly, in the real world.
Where it gets messy.
Where it gets messy.
Yeah.
So get ready to step into the shoes of a production manager who's facing, well, some pretty tough leadership challenges. Hopefully, by the end of this deep dive, you might just find yourself rethinking your own approach to management.
I think a lot of people, when they think about management, they think there's like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, yeah.
But the best leaders are really the ones who can adapt, and who can actually shift their style depending on what the situation calls for.
So you're talking about like contingency management theory, right?
Exactly, yeah. Picking the right tool for the job.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, okay, less about your own personal preference and more about what actually gets results.
Exactly.
Now, our sources actually dive into 4 major factors that influence management style.
Uh-huh.
The task itself.
Okay.
Those, deadlines.
No.
The
Okay.
experience of the team.
Right.
And, yeah, even the manager's personality.
And it's really the interplay of all these factors that make it interesting. It's
Yeah.
not just checking off boxes,
Right.
you know? It's this really dynamic system. So the best management style is the one that actually helps the business reach their goals, period.
Okay, I'm following you.
Yeah.
So let's bring this to life then with the case study. We're introduced to Peter, the production manager at BKW. They manufacture parts for car companies.
Okay.
So pretty high pressure to deliver, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Peter's been with his company for over a decade.
Wow, okay.
Worked his way up from the factory floor.
Nice.
And the source actually describes him as, quote, a hard technical man who will always get the work done. But it seems like he might not be the most flexible guy.
That's really interesting. And, his background probably plays a huge role in his management style, right? Imagine spending years on the factory floor
Oh, yeah.
where it's all about precision and efficiency.
You're just so focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, and that kind of, shapes you in a way. So it wouldn't be surprising if Peter, leans towards that more directive style, maybe even, a little autocratic.
Right, because the environment kind of demands it.
Exactly, especially in manufacturing,
Yeah.
where everything's so fast-paced.
So maybe not the best at handling curveballs then.
Right.
And what do we see next? Well, wouldn't you know it?
Oh, yeah.
Enter Kim, the marketing manager. She's full of ideas, always looking to, expand that product line.
Okay.
Great for business, not always great for Peter's carefully planned schedule.
Oh, so this is a classic clash
Totally.
between marketing and production.
Yes.
This really highlights one of the key challenges. How do these different personalities and potentially even conflicting management styles actually affect the team's effectiveness?
Right. Yeah.
Because if Kim's throwing in these last-minute requests and Peter's not great with change, well, that's a recipe for stress.
Yeah.
Right.
And the source even mentions, that the production staff is getting hit with these short notices
Oh, no.
changes,
Yeah.
because of Kim's orders.
Yeah.
Not exactly a smooth operation.
Not a smooth operation.
But before we get into, how that actually plays out, let's meet one more player, Harvey.
Okay, Harvey.
So Harvey leads the team that's responsible for the planning,
Right.
the transitions between shifts,
Okay.
keeping that whole production line actually running smoothly.
That's important.
Super important, yeah.
Especially since, they're working on rotating shifts
Yeah,
with full-time and part-time employees.
totally. So a lot of juggling involved.
Yeah, for sure.
This actually makes me wonder, does Harvey's team's need for, that flexibility and communication,
Yeah.
does that lead to, a different management style compared to what we're seeing with Peter on the main floor?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the heart of contingency management.
Okay.
Remember, there's no single right style. It's really adapting to the specific circumstances of the team, right?
Right, yeah.
And the task at hand.
Okay.
We'll get into that a little later.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So we've got Peter, he's all about getting things done, but maybe struggling with that flexibility.
Right.
We've got Kim. She's like that wild card
A wild card.
who, might not be communicating as effectively as she could.
Yeah.
And then there's Harvey, whose team might require more of that collaborative approach.
Uh-huh.
So how does Peter, as the production manager, handle all of these different personalities and demands?
That's where it gets really fascinating. Just imagine you're in Peter's shoes. How would you handle this? What kind of leader would you be? Keep that in mind as we go on with the deep dive.
All right, listeners, keep that in mind. Okay, so we've kind of set the stage.
Right.
Got these different personalities, and maybe some management clashes are brewing.
Yeah, yeah.
How does this all play out at BKW though? Like, what's the impact?
Well, one of our sources hints at some pretty serious issues. We know that Peter's all about that, technical expertise,
Right.
efficiency. And he probably loves it when things are predictable,
Oh yeah, for sure.
when the tasks are clear, the process is, well defined.
Yeah.
That's his comfort zone.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But business doesn't always play by those rules, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things change, new demands come up, you need to be able to adapt.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where Kim, throws a wrench into things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bringing in new orders, expanding the product line, which on the surface,
Good things.
good things, right?
Yeah.
But for Peter, who loves that predictability,
Right.
these last-minute requests for new parts. Man, I bet that feels like a barrage of curveballs.
It's almost like watching two different management styles collide,
Yeah.
Peter's preference for that more controlled, maybe even autocratic approach,
Right.
which makes sense, given where he came from.
Totally, yeah.
It clashes with the need for adaptability that Kim's role just demands.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it reminds me of this time I was managing a software team, and we had this brilliant engineer.
Oh, yeah.
So smart, but he absolutely hated deviating from the plan.
Okay.
Like, any last-minute feature request would just throw him off.
I've worked with those people.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out how to work with them effectively,
Yeah.
Like, build in some buffer time.
It's about, understanding those individual styles.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference.
Totally. It's not about, putting everyone in the same mold, but how do you leverage those strengths?
Yeah.
So back to VKW. How's Peter's team handling all of this change, though? Does their experience play into, how well they can adapt?
Absolutely, yeah. The experience level of the employees is, huge here.
Oh, okay.
If Peter's team is super skilled and they're used to handling, some variation, they might be able to adjust a little easier to those last-minute requests.
Okay.
In that case, maybe a more collaborative style where Peter involves his team in finding solutions would be most effective.
So they're using their expertise to be like, okay, we can incorporate these new orders.
Yeah, yeah.
Without, derailing everything.
Without stopping the whole production.
Okay.
But what if, the team is less experienced?
Yeah.
Or the changes are, really disruptive?
Yeah.
Then that more directive approach might be what's needed.
Right, okay.
Peter might need to, take charge.
Okay.
Make those quick decisions, guide the team through the changes.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot, between control and flexibility based on, what's happening and what the team can actually handle.
It's not about saying one style is better. It's recognizing that, you need to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Good managers are always kind of assessing what's going on,
Absolutely.
and adjusting their approach based on the team, and everything else.
It's like being a jazz musician,
Oh, okay.
You have your basic melody,
Uh-huh.
but you need to be able to, improvise,
Right.
adjust to the other players, the mood.
Yeah.
It's the same with managing.
I like that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Peter maybe struggling with that adaptability.
Yeah.
And we've got the team's experience playing a role.
Right.
Our sources highlight another element, though.
Okay.
The manager's own preferences
Uh-huh.
and how that can affect their style.
Right. And this is where Keter's background,
Yeah.
working his way up on the factory floor, that's really interesting.
Okay.
He's seen how important efficiency is, following procedures, minimizing those disruptions.
Right.
Those experiences really shape, what he thinks is good management.
So even if he gets it, even if he understands that you need to be flexible,
Uh-huh.
I bet his gut reaction is to go back to that, directive style.
Yeah.
Especially when things get stressful.
Especially when the pressure's on.
It's that's what he knows.
It's falling back on what you know best.
Right, yeah.
Even if it isn't the best approach.
It makes me think about the communication breakdown between Peter and Kim.
Oh, yeah.
The source mentions that as, a big source of stress for the team.
Right.
Even if Peter was, the most adaptable guy ever.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not getting clear information from Kim about changes,
That's going to create problems.
it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not just about Peter adapting to Kim's requests.
Right.
It's about them figuring out a way to work together.
Yeah. It's about, anticipating those changes.
Right.
And communicating clearly with the team.
They'll,
instead of constantly reacting to those last-minute demands.
yeah,
What if they had a system where, those new orders are factored into the schedule
right.
in a more proactive way?
That'd be great.
Imagine if Peter, had a 30-minute meeting every week with Kim
Okay, yeah.
to discuss, upcoming projects and adjust those production schedules.
Okay, so instead of constant fire drills,
Right.
it's more coordinated.
Proactive.
Everyone's on the same page, right?
Exactly.
I bet that would reduce stress and, things would be more efficient.
It likely would.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to that, core principle.
Okay.
The best management style is the one that helps the business reach their goals.
Right.
In BKW's case, they need to find that balance between efficient production and, the demands of a growing, evolving market.
Okay, so Peter maybe needs to be more flexible and, communicate with Kim better.
Right.
But what about Harvey and his team?
Right.
They're doing things a little differently, right?
Sounds like it. Yeah.
On the main production floor,
Yeah.
their focus is on planning and smooth transitions between shifts.
Right. They need coordination, communication, and, some autonomy.
Right.
Remember, they're working with full-time and part-time employees
Yeah.
on a rotating schedule.
That's a lot.
That adds, another layer of complexity.
So maybe a more collaborative approach makes sense for them.
Potentially.
Yeah.
This type of environment, it might lend itself to a more participative style.
Okay.
Harvey might involve his team more in making decisions,
Right.
solicit their input on scheduling and task allocation, and really empower them to, to own their roles.
It's interesting to see how that specific, demand
Yeah.
of their task, their team,
Yeah.
leads to a different approach.
Yeah. Different than Peter.
It's like a mini case study,
Exactly. It highlights the fact that, there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
Effective leadership is about understanding those nuances
Ah, yeah.
and adapting to the situation.
Right, yeah.
And creating an environment where, everyone can do their best work.
So we've got Peter, who maybe needs to be more flexible.
Right.
Kim, who needs to work on her communication.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey, who's using more of a participative style.
Yeah.
So how does BKW, as a company, deal with these different styles, personalities,
Right.
and achieve its goals?
That is the question, isn't it? We're going to explore that as we wrap up in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But remember, you're still in Peter's shoes.
Right.
How would you handle this? How would you, create that cohesive and productive environment
Yeah.
with all these moving pieces? Keep those questions in mind,
Yeah.
as we go to the finish line.
All right. So listeners, keep those questions in mind as we wrap up. Okay. So we've looked at all the different management styles happening at BKW.
Right.
But the question is, how does it all come together,
Yeah.
for the company?
Yeah.
How do they make all these different approaches work?
What's interesting is our source doesn't give us a clear answer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more like open questions,
Huh.
which I think is more valuable, honestly. It makes you think about how complex management is in the real world.
Yeah.
There's rarely, one right answer.
So it's not about, finding that magic formula or saying one style's better.
No, not at all.
It's more nuanced.
It is. It's a constant process
Okay.
of adapting and communicating and understanding, the details of each situation.
So different styles can work together.
They can, and they can actually complement each other.
Okay. So how would that work at BKW?
Well, imagine if Peter, as the production manager, started thinking more strategically
Okay.
instead of just, day-to-day efficiency.
So he's working with Kim more, anticipating those new products.
Yeah.
Building in some flexibility.
Exactly.
So it's less reacting and more proactive.
Proactive planning.
Okay, I like it.
And maybe he starts giving his team leads, like Harvey,
Yeah.
more responsibility
Okay.
to manage their areas, with more autonomy.
So it's not about getting rid of those individual styles.
Right.
It's more like, how do we make them work together to
Integrating them, yeah.
create a more responsive system?
Yeah.
I can see that.
But for that to work, you really need strong leadership at the top, someone who sees the big picture,
Okay.
understands everyone's, strengths, weaknesses,
Yeah.
guides the team towards the same goal.
Okay.
It's like an orchestra,
Okay.
Each musician has their own style, their instrument,
Mhm.
but the conductor,
Yeah.
they bring it all together,
It's all about that harmony.
Exactly, into one beautiful sound.
It makes me think about those companies where every department's fighting.
Oh, something.
Sales versus marketing,
Yeah.
engineering versus product development.
It's like they're working against each other.
No. Yeah, it's a mess.
It is, and it doesn't work.
No.
Effective organizations, they get it.
Yeah.
Success comes from working together.
Yeah.
Breaking down those walls.
Right.
Creating that environment where everyone feels, valued,
Correct.
and they're all moving in the same direction.
All right, so wrapping up, what are the big takeaways
Okay.
from this BKW deep dive?
Well, we've seen how, things like time, employee experience, the manager's personality, they all shape the leadership approach.
Uh-huh.
We saw how those styles can clash.
Right.
And how important, communication, flexibility,
Yeah.
and strong leadership is to deal with it all.
It's a good reminder that there's not a single way to manage.
Right. There isn't.
You need to know those approaches, your strengths, your weaknesses.
Yeah, and adapt.
And adapt, yeah.
To that situation.
And I think, at the end of the day, it's about creating a good environment, right?
Absolutely. One where everyone can do their best work.
Yeah.
Where, everyone's talents are recognized.
Yeah, right.
And the whole team achieves something amazing.
Yeah, it's not just about checking things off a list.
Yeah.
It's about that culture. Yeah.
It is. It's about success and collaboration and respect.
Yeah, I love that.
As you, keep learning about management,
Yeah.
think about the leaders you've seen in your own life.
Okay.
The ones who, really inspired you.
Yeah.
The ones who motivated you,
Mm-hmm.
who made you feel, valued.
Yeah.
What was it about their style that, really worked for you? What can you learn from them?
Yeah.
And how can you use that to be a better leader yourself?
That's a great point. Great questions for our listeners to think about.
Yeah, keep those in mind.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be well on your way to, mastering this whole leadership thing.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us on another deep dive.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.